I moved into my late grandmother's old colonial house about a week ago. After my breakup, I needed a fresh start. This quiet town felt perfect for it. The house had its own charm, even if it sometimes felt a bit off. I thought the creaky floorboards just added character. I settled in quickly, unpacking boxes during the day and reading by the dim light of my grandmother's old lamp at night. On the third night, I woke up to soft piano notes. The music drifted from the living room. I thought I might be dreaming at first. In a daze, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the door. The sound grew clearer, a gentle song that pulled me in. But as I reached for the doorknob, I felt it twist beneath my grip. It was locked. My heart raced. I was alone in the house. Maybe it was all in my head, I told myself. Maybe I just needed a good night's sleep. I crawled back into bed, but the feeling didn't leave. I convinced myself it was nothing. The next day was okay until I walked into the kitchen. It was freezing, even though it was warm outside. I rubbed my arms and opened the window, hoping the breeze would help. It did nothing. I shook my head, thinking maybe the old house just had quirks. Later that week, while unpacking in the living room, I saw something move in the corner of my eye. I turned, but nothing was there. I pushed it away and focused on my work. However, more strange things kept happening. One morning, I saw my favorite mug had moved from the counter to the table. I felt a bit unsettled, but I wrote it off as my distracted mind. Then, one afternoon in the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of a young girl in the mirror. She looked back at me with long, dark hair and a blank expression. I froze, but when I turned around, she was gone. I had no idea what I just saw. Maybe it was just the shadows playing tricks on me. Or maybe it was the stress getting to me. Everything escalated. One night, I woke to the piano again. My heart raced faster this time. I didn't hesitate. I leaped out of bed and rushed to the living room. I had to find out what was going on. I twisted the doorknob and the music stopped. I opened the door and it was silent inside. I wish I could say I found answers, but I didn't. I wandered around the empty room, searching for something, anything. I found none, just shadows sitting quietly in corners. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was here with me. I've tried to brush it off, but now I'm not so sure. I don't know what this house wants from me. I don't even know if any of it is real. It all lingers in my mind like an echo, each moment spiraling.
Deeper into uncertainty. The music still haunts me, chasing me through my dreams at night. I just want to feel safe in my new home. I spent most of the next day trying to ignore the weird happenings. I decided that I was just being paranoid, so I went for a long walk to clear my head. The town had a few shops, a cafe, and a park. I even chatted with a few locals who seemed friendly enough. But as the sun began to set, I felt the familiar pull of dread. I wasn't looking forward to being alone in the house again. That night, I planned to distract myself with a movie. I got comfortable on the couch, popcorn in hand, but the uneasy feeling never left me. Just as the film reached a suspenseful moment, I heard it, a soft sobbing coming from the hallway upstairs. I paused the movie and listened. Panic gripped me. Surely I was imagining it. I took a deep breath and steeled myself. I walked to the staircase, my heart pounding. The sound grew louder, a soft wail intermingling with silence. I didn't want to investigate, but something pulled me up those steps. The second floor felt colder, like stepping into a different world. Each creak of the old house echoed in the stillness. At the end of the hall, I paused outside a closed door. I didn't even know what was behind it. The sobs were coming from here. I reached for the doorknob, hesitation creeping in. But curiosity got the best of me, and I twisted it slowly. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit room filled with boxes and dust. It looked like an old storage area. Nothing was out of place, except that the sobbing stopped abruptly as soon as I stepped inside. I felt a chill wash over me. I scanned the room, my breath catching as I noticed an old diary lying atop a forgotten trunk. My grandmother had never mentioned anything about it. I opened the diary, the pages crumbling between my fingers. It was full of entries from years ago, mostly mundane things. But the last entry made my blood run cold. I heard her again today, my sweet girl. She plays so beautifully. If only they could understand. I dropped the diary. My mind raced. What girl? Who was she talking about? It all felt too real. As I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. I was plunged into darkness, and I fumbled for the handle in a blind panic. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice echoing. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat. I pressed my weight against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then a whisper floated through the air, chilling me to the bone. "Play with me." I froze, the breath leaving my lungs. Something was definitely wrong with this house. I felt the truth in my bones. It wasn't just the sounds or sights. There was a presence here, something
Lost. Finally, with all my strength, I pushed against the door, and it swung open. I rushed to the safety of the hallway, gasping for air, but the noise was back, that soft piano music filling the air. I couldn't run from it anymore. I had to figure this out. I took a deep breath, standing tall. I needed to know what happened in this house. What was the story behind the girl? And why did her music haunt me? I turned back toward the room, determination building inside me. That was when I saw it. A silhouette of a figure standing in the corner, watching me. I couldn't breathe. The figure was small, almost childlike, standing perfectly still in the shadowed corner. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet I felt rooted in place, trapped by fear and curiosity. The soft piano music trailed off, replaced by a heavy silence that felt suffocating. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, clutching the doorframe for support. My heart raced, a wild drum against my rib cage. The figure remained motionless, but I could see delicate features. A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with dark hair falling over her face. Then she stepped forward, inch by inch, into the faint light spilling from the hallway. Her eyes, wide and glassy, seemed to hold centuries of sorrow. "Will you play with me?" she asked, her voice sounding both sweet and haunting. I shook my head, trying to reject the absurdity of the situation. "No, Please," she interrupted, her voice echoing in the stillness of the room. "I've been waiting." This was insane. A ghostly child asking to play? I had read enough horror stories to know how this typically ended. But I couldn't tear myself away. There was something within her gaze, a thread of longing that pulled me closer. "Why are you here?" I whispered, stepping back as she took another slow step forward. There was desperation in her voice as she continued. "I just want someone to hear me." Before I could respond, I remembered the diary. My pulse quickened. The girl in the diary. My grandmother mentioned a child, the one who played so beautifully. Was this her? I took a shaky breath. "What happened to you?" The girl's expression darkened. "They don't understand my music. They locked me away, away from the piano." Her words hung in the air, heavy with loss. "Will you help me play again?" My gut twisted. "Help you? How?" Her eyes sparkled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. You just need to listen. Suddenly, the piano sound returned, this time louder and clearer, filling the room with an ethereal melody. I turned as the sound vibrated in the very walls. It was beautiful yet poignant, a song echoing both happiness and sadness. But the realization struck me like a lightning bolt. If this house was home to something so tragic, could I be the next victim of its haunting? The warning bells in my head rang furiously. "Wait!" I shouted, but she was already moving toward
the edge of the room, beckoning me. "I can show you." I hesitated. But what if this wasn't a trap? What if she was just a lost child in need? I took another step forward, compelled by both compassion and dread. Then, as if sensing my resolve, the music stopped. The girl turned, her eyes shimmering with intensity. "You need to decide. Do you want to help me?" The air thickened with tension, and I realized this was more than just a fleeting moment. There was something deeper at play here, something worth understanding, even if it terrified me. Just as I opened my mouth to answer, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. My heart dropped. I whipped around, fear flooding my senses. What was that? The girl mirrored my panic, whispering now, "They're here." My instinct told me to flee, but the mystery of the girl pulled me back. As I prepared to ask her what we should do, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. I could feel her presence beside me, and I knew in that moment I wasn't alone anymore. Would I face the unknown, or would I run to find safety from the chaos? The answer loomed in the shadows, and I had to choose quickly. The darkness thickened around us, wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. I held my breath, straining to hear anything over the pounding of my heart. The girl was still beside me, her breath soft and quick, matching my own frantic pace. "What do we do?" I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. "Listen," she urged, her words barely a murmur. It was almost like a chant, solemn and yet filled with urgency. "You have to listen." Before I could respond, I felt a shift in the air, like electricity charging the forgotten corners of the room. A low humming noise started to emerge, a sound that seemed to crawl from the walls and floorboards. It was almost like a heartbeat, rhythmic and steady. Then, another crash echoed from downstairs. My stomach twisted. Something was moving down there, something I couldn't see. I instinctively took a step back, but the girl's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "They must not find you," she insisted, eyes wide with a fear I couldn't understand. "Who?" I breathed, glancing toward the darkened doorway as dread clawed at my insides. "The ones who kept me here, who silenced my music." I don't want to be here," I stammered. "Then you must help me." Her voice was urgent, desperate. "If you help me, we can escape." Escape? I wasn't sure what she meant. How could I help her? And escape to where? But the desperation in her voice reached deep into my heart, igniting flickers of bravery I didn't know I had. Before I could gather my thoughts, a light flickered back to life, as if someone had turned on a switch. The abrupt brightness contrasted starkly with the terror hovering around us. The room slowly came into view, illuminated
by an unsettling glow that flickered like candlelight. It wasn't just the girl standing there anymore. Shadowy figures began to appear, swirling at the edges of my vision. They were mere outlines, but I could feel their gaze, all of them fixed on me. My throat constricted. "Those are the ones you need to avoid," the girl said, her voice trembling. "They can't leave this place, but you can." My heart raced again, and I could feel my breath quickening. "Avoid? How?" "Stay near me," she replied, her grip tightening. "You can help me play my music. You can set me free." What if they catch us? The question hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. But it didn't seem to faze her. "I won't let that happen," she promised, though doubt flashed in her eyes.
In that moment, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, an unmistakable glint of metal reflecting the light. There, on the floor, was a small music box. How had I not noticed it before? That's when I saw it. The box wasn't just any music box. It was intricately decorated and bore the same design as the piano in the room. Opening it could bring forth a melody I didn't know, or worse, it could unleash something I was not prepared to face. The girl seemed to sense my hesitation. "That's it, the box. Please, if you open it, I can finally play again." I felt the weight of my decision bearing down on me. Should I trust her? Whispers of those shadowy figures echoed in my mind. Before I could think it through, a new crash echoed from downstairs. This time, it was accompanied by a deep, guttural growl that reverberated in my bones. Whatever was down there was getting closer. I had to act. Would I open the box and risk everything? Or would I turn and run, leaving the girl and her haunting plea behind? With my choice looming, I reached for the music box. As my fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the music box, a sudden chill swept through the room. Goosebumps prickled my skin. The shadows around us seemed to recoil for a moment, as if anticipating something. I hesitated, the weight of the box urging me to decide. "Please," the girl whispered. Her voice was strained, as if each word was a struggle. "You must hurry." I pulled my hand back for a split second, uncertainty bubbling up in me. What if opening that box unleashed something worse than the growls echoing from below? But when I looked into her eyes, I saw something more than fear. Hope. It pushed me forward. I lifted the lid. The soft click echoed loudly in the silence. For a brief moment, nothing happened. I held my breath, ready for anything. Then a gentle tune began to play, sweet and haunting, the kind of melody that could break your heart. As the notes filled the room, the shadows reacted. They writhed and twisted, becoming more defined. And aggressive, like a storm brewing. I could see their forms more clearly now, twisted faces and desperate hands reaching out, trying to grasp the air. "No," the girl shouted, her face going pale. "You have to keep playing. Don't stop." My own heart thundered in my chest as I forced myself to listen. The music flooded my ears, overcoming my fear. I felt the energy shift as if the melody had awakened something long trapped within the room. A warmth spread through me, a strange sense of connection to the girl beside me. But then the shadows began to close in. Their movements turned frenzied, clawing closer to me. I could almost hear whispers, low and urgent, speaking words I couldn't quite catch. It was like they were warning me, or begging me to stop. Suddenly, the music box trembled in my hands. I feared it might slip away as I gripped it tighter. "What are they?" I shouted, trying to drown out the panic creeping into my voice. "They are part of the music," she replied, her eyes wide as she struggled against their pull. "They are those who cannot let go. They want the music for themselves." Desperation surged through me. I needed to play more, to hold the space open for us. But the shadowy figures were pressing closer. I could feel the chill of their presence, the weight of despair crashing in like waves. "Make it louder," the girl urged. "We can break their hold." I took a deep breath and pressed my thumb harder against the box. The melody grew, echoing through the air like a magic spell. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly. With the volume raised, the shadows screamed. It was a horrific sound, a blend of anger and sorrow. The girl's face twisted in pain, but she stood firm at my side. I swayed with the rhythm, pushing back against the darkness that tried to consume us.
Then, just as I thought we might succeed, the growling from downstairs erupted into a roar. The deep sound was terrifying, echoing with an intensity that vibrated in my bones. In that moment, I knew whatever was in the house wasn't going to let us go easily. "What now?" I gasped, fear gripping me again. "Just keep playing," she shouted, her voice full of determination. "We have to reach the end of the song." I felt the music reaching its climax, the tension in the air thickening to a breaking point. And then, just as I was desperate for answers, something shifted again in the shadows. A figure broke from the darkness, larger and more defined than the others. It looked up at us, its features sharp and haunting. And at that moment, I realized I had opened a door I might never be able to close. I couldn't look away. What had I unleashed? The figure loomed in front of us, its eyes glowing faintly like embers. I could feel its gaze boring into me, both curious and— "Don't stop!" the girl shouted again, her urgency slicing through my fear. I forced myself to nod, pushing the terror deep inside as I pressed my thumb against the box once more. The melody twinkled through the room, almost bravely in the face of the horror surrounding us. Slowly, I began to feel the connection to the girl strengthen. It felt like she was tethered to my very soul. As the notes danced in the air, the shadows jerked back, as if repelled by the light of the music. The larger figure, however, took a step forward, and with that step, my breath caught. The shadows around it shifted, and I could see hints of its past. A face once familiar, now buried in darkness. "What are you?" I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "Just keep playing," she urged, her eyes darting between me and the figure. "It's losing its hold." The shadows screeched, a deafening sound that made the walls shudder. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a battle for our very souls. I felt the pressure in the air grow heavier. The walls seemed to vibrate with the cries of the shadows, desperately reaching for the music that held them at bay. But the larger figure wasn't deterred. "You awakened me. You can't turn back," it rasped, its voice echoing with a hollow sadness. A sinking realization washed over me. This figure was once human, shaped by love and loss, twisted by despair. It wanted to capture us, to drag us into its sorrow. The melody began to waver in my hands. I could feel my resolve breaking. "Don't listen to it," the girl yelled, her voice grounding me back to the moment. The music flowed through me, pushing back against the shadows that were clawing at my mind. I took a shaky breath and focused on the girl. "We can't let it get to us," I shouted, trying to rally my strength. I squeezed the music box tighter, the notes climbing to a higher pitch, echoing confidently in the dark. But as I played, something else shifted. A cold gust swept through the room, snuffing out the warmth that the music had brought. The shadows grew darker, swirling faster around us. I felt an icy grip on my heart as the growl from downstairs intensified, shaking the very floor beneath me. "Something's coming," I warned, my pulse racing. The girl's eyes widened as she grabbed my arm. "We don't have much time. We have to reach the end." I could see shadows forming at the doorway now, monstrous shapes that dripped with shadows of lost souls. I knew we were running out of time, the melody nearing its end. But before I could voice my doubts, the larger shadow lunged at us, its outstretched hand seeking to pull us into the dark. "You cannot escape," it screamed. The music crashed against the shadows, and for a moment I thought I could feel a light breaking through. Just as the figure was almost upon us, the last note of the melody rang out, echoing through the room. Then everything went dark. The music box fell silent. My heart dropped. What had I done? I blinked, trying to adjust to the thick darkness enveloping us. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, a constant reminder that I was still alive, but for how long? I reached out, feeling for the girl, and my fingers brushed against her arm. "Are you okay?" I whispered, my voice shaky. I think so," she replied, but her words felt thin, like they could dissolve in the dark. The silence around us seemed heavy, as if the shadows themselves were holding their breath. "Where is it?" I asked, my eyes straining to see anything. "Where's the figure?" "I don't know," she said, her voice laced with fear. "But it's definitely not gone." Just then, I heard a low growl reverberate through the darkness. It wasn't the same growl as before. This one felt closer, more menacing. I shivered as the sound clawed at the edges of my mind. "We need to move," I said, pulling her toward where I thought the door was. My other hand fumbled through my pockets until I found my phone. With shaky fingers, I pressed the power button, holding my breath as the screen illuminated the room. The light flickered to life, casting trembling shadows on the walls. In an instant, everything came rushing back: the music box, the figure, the shadows. I had expected to see nothing but darkness, but as the light swept the room, my stomach dropped. The larger figure was gone, but the walls themselves seemed to be alive. Faces appeared in the shadows, twisted expressions of pain and despair, leering at us from the corners. "What is this?" I gasped, stumbling backward into the girl. "I told you we unleashed something," she said, her eyes wide. "We need to get out of here." As she spoke, the shadow shifted again, rushing toward us like a wave. I spun around, desperate for an escape. Just ahead, a door loomed, partially ajar. With a single nod, we darted toward it, but before we could reach it, the growling intensified, surrounding us. "Keep moving," she urged, pushing me through the narrow opening. I squeezed through, pulling her in behind me, just as the shadows lunged. We stumbled into the hallway, my heart racing. My phone's light cast quick glances into the corners, but revealed nothing solid. It was only darkness, the kind that felt alive, swirling and sneering at us. "Where do we go now?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "Upstairs," she yelled, pointing back the way we'd come. "There's a way." Before she could finish, something rumbled from below, shaking the ground beneath us. I grabbed her hand tightly, dragging her toward the staircase as the noise crescendoed. I didn't want to look back, but I felt the shadows chase us, hungry for our fear. As we reached the stairs, I heard a faint echo of the music box, a ghost of what had once protected us. The notes danced through the air, but they sounded wrong, twisted. It was almost like a taunt, reminding us of our failure. And that was when I noticed something glinting in the dim light. In the corner of the hallway, half buried in debris, lay the music box, ominously intact. "That's it!" I shouted, a surge of hope bursting through the fear. But as if sensing my intention, shadows lunged toward the box, surrounding it like a storm. I felt a chill creeping closer. "We have to get it," the girl shouted. But I hesitated. What if the music caused this? What if it was the key to our escape and our doom? Before I could decide, the shadows surged, rising like a tidal wave. "Get it!" she screamed, lunging forward. But in that moment, the shadows surged again, their darkness shrouding my vision. I couldn't think, I could only act, my hand outstretched. What happens next? I was about to find out. My fingers finally snagged the edges of the music box. I yanked it free just as the shadows swirled around us, brushing my skin like icy breath. The girl stared at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "Open it!" she screamed. With trembling hands, I turned the box over. The intricate carvings glinted under the dim light. Time seemed to freeze as I hesitated, my pulse racing. What if this was the source of our problems? But the growls were growing louder, the urgency clawing at my mind. Without thinking, I flipped the lid open. The familiar melody began to flow, notes spilling into the air like fragile glass, but they carried a heavy weight. The shadows paused, their movement stuttering as the sound filled the space. "This isn't right," I murmured, my eyes darting around. The faces on the walls seemed to twitch, pulsing in sync with the notes. The growls softened to low whimpers, but I could still feel the danger lurking just out of sight. "What now?" the girl asked, her voice edged with both hope and fear. I don't know," I admitted, trying to stay calm, but the music felt more like a warning than protection. Then a new sound sliced through the air, a sharp crack. The floor beneath us groaned as if it were alive, shaking in protest. "We need to move," I shouted, snapping the box shut and tossing it aside. We couldn't afford to linger. I grabbed her wrist and we raced down the hallway, the haunting melody still echoing in the background. Each step felt like a challenge against an invisible force trying to pull us back. But as we reached the top of the staircase, I noticed something. A shadow, hanging over the railing, stretching across the stairs. It was ominous and flickering, like a candle guttering on the verge of extinguishing. "What is that?" she gasped. Before I could respond, the form shifted, solidifying into a humanoid shape. It had no face, just darkness where features should have been, but I could feel its eyes drilling into me, an unnatural hunger boiling beneath the surface. "Run!" I screamed, pulling her into a sprint down the hall. We dashed toward a door at the end of the corridor, fervently hoping for a way out before it could launch itself at us. Just as we reached for the knob, a claw-like hand shot out of the shadows, gripping my ankle. My scream escaped before I could stop it. I stumbled, falling to the floor, the pain flaring through me. The girl turned back, desperation on her face. "Help!" The darkness writhed, dragging me backward into the cold embrace of the shadow, its icy fingers coiling tighter. A rush of panic coursed through me. I flailed, trying to break free, but I could feel it pulling me deeper into the dark. "Let go of him!" she cried, lunging forward. Just when I thought I would be lost to the void, she grabbed my wrist with both hands, pulling with all her strength. For a brief moment, I felt hope, the pressure loosening. But then I saw movement behind her. Another shadow was creeping forward, eyes glinting in the dim light like shards of glass. The music box sat forgotten on the floor, and all at once its melody shifted again. The change was instantly unsettling, plunging into discord as if mocking us. I could see her face transform from defiance to terror. "Turn it off!" she shouted as the shadows swelled, closing in. And that was when I realized this music was a summons, awakening something worse. My heart sank as I realized I might not just lose myself to the darkness, but lose her too. "No!" I screamed, the weight of the moment crashing down around us. What else was waiting in the shadows? What other horrors were unleashed by a simple melody? I pushed against the floor, struggling to get on my feet. The grip of the shadow felt like ice, and I had to fight harder to break free. With one powerful yank, I tore my leg from its grasp, and we stumbled toward the door. "Keep moving!" I shouted, urgency flooding my voice. As the door swung open, a wave of brightness washed over us, momentarily blinding me. I hesitated at the threshold, unsure, but I could feel the shadows lunging behind us, roaring like starving beasts. I pulled the girl through the door, slamming it shut just in time. We found ourselves in a dimly lit room, walls lined with old, dusty books and strange paintings that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. The air smelled stale, filled with the residue of abandonment. "Are we safe here?" she asked, her breath quickening. "I don't know," I admitted through gritted teeth. The door shuddered under the force of something heavy pressing against it, scratching and scraping. I backed away, putting distance between us and the door. It felt fragile, like a flimsy shield against the chaos. Then I spotted it, a small window on the far wall. "We have to get out, now!" "Wait!" she exclaimed, pointing at the paintings. "Look at that one!"
I turned to see a painting of a woman standing in a dark forest. Her eyes seemed vivid and alive, almost pleading, though her expression was one of sorrow. The brushwork was surreal, as if the woman was trapped between two worlds. "What about it?" I asked, glancing back at the door which rattled ominously. "She looks familiar," she said, tilting her head. Before I could respond, the door burst open with a deafening crash, sending splinters flying. The dark figure from the hallway surged into the room, its form rippling like smoke. It reached for me, the shadows flicking out like venomous tongues. I felt a surge of dread. "Run!" We dashed past the painting, but as we did, I noticed something bizarre. The woman's painted eyes shifted, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear. I gasped, a chill racing down my spine. "What is happening?" I shouted, glancing back at the girl, who had a look of pure horror on her face. "I don't know, but we need to go." The shadow lunged again, closer this time, and I felt a hot breath against my neck. Desperation surged in my veins. "To the window!" I yelled, pointing. We rushed towards the small pane, adrenaline fueling us as the creature drew nearer. The girl started to pull at the window, but it was stuck, the frame swollen with age and neglect. "Help me!" Just then, a loud crash echoed behind us. The creature was more than just a shadow now. It was morphing, becoming more solid and tangible. I could see where its mouth began to twist into a wicked grin. And that's when I remembered the music box. "The box!" I shouted. "It's the key!" "What?" she blurted, confusion flashing across her face. "I think it has something to do with all this. We need to find it." I turned back towards the door, the shadow creeping up, relentless. Suddenly, everything went dark as the creature enveloped the room, the painting fading into the shadows. "No!" I cried out, panic blurring my thoughts. We were trapped in its grasp, but one question burned in my mind. What power did the music box hold, and would it be enough to break free from this nightmare? I stumbled back into the darkness, the absence of light swallowing us whole. The sensation of cold wrapped around me like a shroud, making it hard to breathe. My heart thudded in my chest as I fought to remember where I was, where the girl was. I willed myself to focus, to find a flicker of hope amidst the encroaching despair. Suddenly, a faint shimmer caught my eye, a small glint of light barely breaking the veil of shadows. I squinted, willing it to clarify as I pushed forward, gripping the air around me in a desperate bid for stability.
And then, miraculously, my fingers brushed against something solid and familiar. The music box. Somehow, it hadn't been lost to the shadows. Instinctively, I lifted it in front of me, my hands trembling. "Is that it?" The girl's voice reached me through the dimness, trembling yet hopeful. I could barely see her, but the clarity in her tone brought a sense of determination back into me. "Yes," I replied, my voice shaky with both resolve and fear. "If we can play it again, maybe, just maybe, we can fight back." I could sense the shadows moving closer, whispering a symphony of torment that twisted my gut. They wanted to snuff out any flicker of resistance we had left, but I wouldn't let them. Taking a deep breath, I flipped the lid open. The haunting melody spilled forth, its notes hanging in the air, both fragile and powerful. This time, however, the shadows didn't recoil immediately. They pulsed, writhing around us, drawn to the music like moths to a flame. "Keep playing," the girl urged, her voice rising above the chaos. "You have to believe in it." With my heart racing, I pressed the box against my chest. Each note began to resonate within me, connecting me to the girl, to the lost spirits around us. I could feel the music threading through the darkness, stirring something deep within the shadows. But the growls had transformed, changing into a chorus of anguished cries. I saw faces emerge in the murky depths, twisted, searching, crying out for something long lost. They screamed out in desperation, each wail mixing with the melody, creating a dissonance that sent chills through my very core. "Don't stop," she shouted again. "You have to go faster. They're trying to drown out the music." Determination surged in me. I let the fear pour into each note, pouring everything I had into the melody. The music transformed, pulsating in the air like a heartbeat. And with every beat, a burst of light began to emanate from the box, pushing the shadows back like a protective barrier. I felt warmth engulfing us, a burgeoning resistance against the darkness. But the growling shadow, once a whisper, now roared in triumph, shrinking back momentarily before surging forward, its massive form seeking to engulf us entirely. The faces of the lost flickered, their tormented eyes pleading. With anger and despair, they twisted in an attempt to reach for the music. "We're losing it," I shouted, my voice strained. I could feel the shadows clawing at the edges of my consciousness, pulling me into their depths. The girl reached out, grasping my arm tightly. "We're stronger together," she urged, and in that moment I felt every essence of her being, memories of sorrow intertwining with the hope blooming in me. The shadows began to recede, even as they screeched in frustration. "Play harder," she cried. I took a leap of faith, pouring every ounce of magic I had left into the box, the music escalating into a fierce crescendo that pulsed with life. The shadows thrashed against the barrier our melody created, their screams of angry despair echoing through the room. Then, just as I thought we might succumb to their icy tendrils, the music shifted, harmonizing with something more profound than just sound. It resonated with the very heart of the house. A brilliant light burst forth, illuminating the room, dissolving the shadows in radiant waves. I could see them fading, their anguished faces merging into the light as they released their grip. "Let it go," the girl shouted, and I understood. The music wasn't just for us. It was for them, too. Channeling everything I had, I surrendered the music to the air, allowing it to transform into a symphony of release, a way for the lost souls to find their peace. As the shadows shrieked one final time and vanished into the light, a warmth enveloped us, lifting the heaviness that had clung to the house. The darkness retreated, and I could feel the house sighing, grateful for the release. Then, just like that, there was silence. We stood in the dim room, breathing heavily, our chests rising and falling in tandem with the quiet. The girl's grip loosened on my arm, her expression lighting up with an innocence that hadn't been there before. "It worked," she whispered, in disbelief. "Yes," I managed, my own realization dawning. The music had not only saved us, it had freed the spirits trapped in that darkness. But as the echoes of our victory faded away, a lingering question hung in the air. What would become of the house? I glanced around, noticing the faint warmth of dawn creeping through the windows, illuminating the room that had felt so heavy just moments before. Had we really escaped? I still felt a weight on my chest, a blend of triumph and unease. "I think it's over," I said, but the uncertainty lingered. Would any remnants of the darkness return? The ambiguity wrapped itself around me, intertwining with my thoughts. "I still want to know who she was," I said, glancing around at the dust and decay. The girl nodded, though her expression was softer, contemplative. We had made it out of the shadows, but the deeper story of this house, and of the lost girl, remained a mystery. As light filled the room, I turned to her. "What happens now?" Her words hung in the air, unfinished. I wondered if she even knew. And though I looked back at the lingering shadows, I felt something change within me. I may have escaped, but questions about what had really happened persisted. What had been awakened? What had we really unleashed? Would the haunting ever truly end? As we stepped away from the remnants of the house, the unanswered questions swirled around us, woven into the very fabric of the music that had both saved and haunted us. I knew as I walked out into the dawn, I wouldn't forget this place. It had changed me. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes, when the wind stirs strangely, or I hear an echo of a
Lonely note. I wonder if that girl still lingers somewhere in the darkness, still trapped in her cycle of music and shadows, waiting for someone else to listen. But mostly, I try not to think about it.